Okay, this is the third of my videos on my favourite albums ever. And this is the first of the specials. And it's on Gustav Holst The Planets. Probably one of the most popular and well-known pieces of classical music that there is around. And rightly so. It's got everything really, from the aggression of Mars to the kind of peacefulness of Venus, the bringer of peace. You've got Saturn, the bringer of old age, with its onward march of time bit. Da, 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 and so on. And then it finishes, of course, with Neptune the Mystic and the girls' chorus that kind of quietly comes in at the end and kind of drifts off into the cosmos. It's got everything. It's got different kind of melodies, different kind of moods in it. The most famous bit in it is probably the bit in Jupiter that was used later as the music for I Vow to Thee, My Country. That's the most well-known bit of the suite, but it's actually Jupiter, the bringer of jollity, the actual piece of music, the middle bit. But no, it's a fantastic piece of music, and there's lots of different versions of the planets available, because just about every orchestra and just about every conductor has done a version of the planets. So there's lots of them to choose from, and some of them are quite different in how they're done. This is the first version I ever heard. It's Leopold Stokowski and the Los Angeles Philharmonic. And it's on the Music for Pleasure label, which was very popular years ago in the 70s. And it's a brilliant piece of music. It's very well recorded. I mean, Leopold Stokowski as a conductor has a reputation in classical music for adding instruments that were not there in the original composition, and of changing bits and things like this, and adding his own Stokowski touch to the music by quite radically revising it. He doesn't really do that so much with this, not compared to some of what he did with the Tchaikovsky's symphonies. But it's a very well recorded piece of music. It's a very good version to get. It's exciting, it's listenable. So Leopold Stokowski is a very good place to start with it. If you want loud and bombastic, if you want the music, right up in the mix, then there's two versions. There's William Steinberg and the Boston Symphony Orchestra, which is probably the loudest and most everything up in the mix version that you can get hold of. It's kind of loud, it's exciting. You've got a loud, exciting Mars to start with, and it carries on in the same vein. Also, you've got James Levine, the Chicago Symphony Orchestra. This is a good version to get. It's an unusual version, this. It's got this brassy feel to it that you don't get in other versions of the planets. Lots of brass instruments right up front. So these two are exciting, loud versions of the planets. So definitely I'd consider getting those. If you want a solid, traditional version where everything is just really well played to the letter, then a lot of the experts will point you towards Charles Dutoit and the Montreal Symphony Orchestra. This version here, everything is extremely well played. It's not my personal favourite version. I think that there's more exciting versions around, but it is very well done. And similar to that, there's a modern version. That's it there, by Jarowski and the London Philharmonic Orchestra, which is also extremely well played, and I think things are a bit louder in the mix than on Dutoit's version. So this is probably my go-to version at the moment. This version here, it's a very good traditional solid version of the planets. Then more well-known older versions, you've got Sargent and the BBC Symphony Orchestra. This was a very popular version back in the day. Very well played. It's one that I'd still listen to. It's just a good traditional version of the planets. Similarly, you've got Herbert von Karajan's first recording of the Planets, which is this one with the Vienna Philharmonic Orchestra. And Karajan has got a very stringy feel to his recordings, but this is a very, very, very good version of the Planets. And it's better than his second version. He did another version of this. I think it was the Boston Symphony Orchestra, but I can't remember. Berlin Symphony Orchestra, actually, I think. His second version. And it's just not very good. Everything's too low in the mix. You have to turn the volume right up to hear it. And it might be just the way it is on CD, but it's nowhere near as good as this version to my ears. But this is definitely worth getting. Karajan, the Vienna Philharmonic Orchestra. Also really good is Andrei Previn, the London Symphony Orchestra. It's got a really nice women's chorus at the end of Neptune the Mystic. And it's just a very good, normal, well-played version of the Planets. There's then versions by Sir Adrian Boult. Sir Adrian Boult was the conductor of the first ever performance of the Planets, which was in September 1918, just before the end of the First World War, just before the armistice. The Planets was composed by Holst during the First World War, from about 1914 to 1917. And the first performance was actually during the First World War itself, just within a couple of months of the armistice, which is rather fitting considering it's got Mars, the bringer of war, on it, and then it's got Venus, the bringer of peace, as the second part of the suite. But Sir Adrian Boult was the conductor of the first version, and he recorded the Planets himself several times. I think about 5 or 6 times, if not more. This version here that he's credited to the Philharmonic Promenade Orchestra, which I believe I'm right in saying was actually the London Philharmonic Orchestra under a different name, but there was something strange going on there. But this version here is the one that was used at the start of the Quatermass serials in the 1950s. And if you like the old Nigel Kneale Quatermass series, then you'll be familiar with the version. So in that sense, this is one for sci-fi buffs. The Adrian Boult recording with the Philharmonic Promenade Orchestra. Then you've got other versions by Sir Adrian Boult, and this one I think is the best. This one here is with the Vienna State Opera Orchestra. And I think this is the better than the last version he did, which was about in 1978, which you get recommended a lot by the aficionados. But I prefer this version because everything is, again, more upfront in the mix and it's more exciting to listen to. Then you get some very strange versions of the Planets, or unusual ones. I mean, this one here by Mark Elder and the Halle Orchestra is one of those that adds Pluto on the end, which was composed in recent times by Colin Matthews. And it adds Pluto to the end of the suite. And I think that works quite well. I know that there's some classical music aficionados who can't stand it. But I think it adds to the suite in a way. What I don't like is when they jump it in before Neptune and the girls' chorus has fully faded. So before the proper fade out, in comes Pluto. I don't like that. But other than that, I think Pluto by Colin Matthews is an interesting addition, and that's got it on it. This is probably the weirdest recording of the actual Planet suite. It's by Bernard Herrmann. Bernard Herrmann was a film score man. He did the film score to Citizen Kane, and he also worked with Alfred Hitchcock on films like The Birds and Torn Curtain and other Hitchcock films. He did film scores. When he came to record a version of the Planets, he seems to think that the way to do the Planets is to take everything at a really slow funereal pace. And it starts like that even with Mars. So instead of da 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 da, it's da 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 da. You know, can you get it any slower? You know, and the whole thing goes like this. And it is very well worth listening to if you want a strange, unusual version of the Planets that's weird in a good way. It's not like it's not one of the worst versions of the Planets. The worst versions of the Planets aren't the weird ones. It's the ones that are just badly recorded, so everything's too low in the mix, or it's just not very exciting, and you can tell that everything doesn't sync properly. That it's not like that. This is just a very unusual way of doing it, where you just take a famous piece of classical music and do it uber slow, and that's basically what Bernard Herrmann does. So it's definitely worth a listen. Finally, the strangest addition to the Planet's world, if you like, is this a recording, well, if you can call it a recording here, The Planet's Two Other Worlds, The Musical Journey continues. And basically what happened here is the record company, looking for something to sell, lifted a load of completely random pieces of third-rate recordings of pieces of classical music from their catalogue, and just invented planetary sounding names to go with them to do a sequel. So you've got things like Titan, the giant moon of Saturn, and Pluto, the underworld kingdom at the edge of the solar system, and Earth, the giver of life, on it. And all they are just random bits of Rachmaninoff and other composers that have been just lifted out of the catalogue and shoved together. They don't really go together very well. They're not very exciting pieces of music, and it's obviously a cash-in, and it's one of the most unusual additions to the Planet's repertoire. So it's worth a listen for that reason. But if you wanted a good, solid, easy to find version of the Planets that does everything it should, then I'd probably start with this, Vladimir Zhirowsky and the London Philharmonic Orchestra, or just go for my old favourite. You know, you can't go wrong with Leopold Stokowski, even if he does put things in his recordings that the composer didn't. Thank you.